ourselves going. I have very much appreciated the quality of the conversation, the thinking we've had to date. So thank you to you as a team for that. Paku, I think we're in your hands for the health and safety report, please.
Okay, through the chair, the health and it's fair to say the team have been really busy across a number of improvement activities, which are highlighted in the health and safety report. But in particular, they've been focused on two specific areas. And one of them is personal confrontation, and it's fair to say that there's been a number of incidents, and this sort of stuff is on the rise. So the team have been looking at addressing our front-facing office facilities, and also looking at developing specific training to support our people with personal confrontation. The other area of, that they've been completed reviews of our water treatment sites and our refuse sites, and they are now working with our contract managers and our contract partners to address the issues that have been raised at those sites. So I'm really happy to field any questions that you might have.
Thank you for that, Paku. That's really helpful. Folk, do we have questions for Paku about safety?
Thanks. Paku, that personal confrontation training, that's going to give training on sovereign citizens, as outlined in your previous paper, and the way to handle them. That will be covered.
In terms of sovereign citizens, we've got a process in which we address that. Yes, they are part of the public, so they invariably could come in, and there could be verbal so they would be covered within that.
There's a pretty specific way to deal with people with those beliefs, though, as you outlined, and I think it's a great strategy, which is first engagement and then backing off. So they will. I'm talking about your bylaws officers as well as your frontline staff, as well as your counter staff. A little bit of training, I think, would help us. You think?
Yes, thanks for that. And let's look at that. We've got a person that is sort of resourced to kind of manage the kind of complexities of our sovereign citizens. Well, and she's based in my team. So yes,
it's going to be a continuing problem. It's going to get bigger and bigger, and yeah, the training it wouldn't be complicated. It's simple on engagement, really. Yeah. Thanks, Parker. Thanks
for that.
Perhaps I'd also reflect before I pass over to Len, John, that it's actually I want to say just not sovereign citizens. I mean, I think in terms of the risk here, the preparedness of all parts of the community be more vociferous and, dare I say it, confrontational in a way that we haven't been used to in the past as well. Not that I'm denying the exact example you're raising. It's a challenge. Len.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Paku. Couple of things, just very specific detail things. One is on page 37. The health and safety team undertake regular site inspections, transfer stations, area offices, and water services sites. Now, my question goes back to a few years ago, Paku, where I remember a conversation with Alan Tiplady at the time, and it was a discussion around the proximity of the water treatment plant to a bush area next door and the potential risk for fire. If there was a bushfire damaging that water treatment plant. I just wonder if you know if that's ever been addressed, or if that is a present risk, or if there is a buffer or a fire break between the bush and the water treatment plant. And I'm sorry if that throws you in a curveball and you might not have the answer.
No, that is a good question, and I'd certainly need to round back and find that out for you. You know, see what exactly was in the remit of reviewing the sites. So I'll round back around that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Martin.
I noticed down near the bottom of page 38, it has it's talking about the overspeed, and the overspeed incident. So does that kick in is there a certain percentage over the speed limit that it has to register? If you're doing 52 kilometres in a 50k zone, would that register? And as a follow-up question, Ian and the Thames councillors were Guru yesterday for a public meeting about vehicles speeding, and it concerns me the number of overspeed that council staff are doing, and I think we run a very high risk of if a Thames Coromandel sign written vehicle is seen speeding up the coast, it kind of makes our efforts as a public meeting to address it, it makes it very hypocritical.
Thanks, Councillor Rodley. Yes, I mean from purely health and safety perspective, we're concerned as well in terms of the speeding, because as you know, speeding is there could be accidents and that sort of thing. So, and I understand where you're coming from. I get, to answer the first question, yes, it does clock those that are over 50 k's, but we don't actually start the process of looking at people unless they're over the 55 kilometre mark. So because there's a tolerance there, right, in terms of those capturing those.
It's 5 kilometres.
That's correct.
Any speed.
So in terms of monitoring, we look at those people that are above that 55 kilometre mark. We do have process around that in terms of letting their team leaders know that this is the case, and so that they can address those concerns in regards to that. So yeah, kind of where we.
Thank you. I've got Peter, Rika, and then Dali. Peter?
Thank you, Bruce. Just first of all, just a comment. These microphones are fairly directional, so when you turn your face away from the microphone, it does fade quite a bit. Noticeable, particularly with yours, Martin, when you were talking to Paku. Yeah. So my question, bottom page 39, the wellbeing support, and my question relates to what we were discussing earlier about our organisation being an organisation which is complex and often under stress. And my question around all that is what are our leave outstanding reports telling us about, are our people actually getting sufficient respite through taking leave, or being allowed to take leave, or being able to take leave that actually will contribute to their well-being?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. We actually, as a leadership team, reviewed our leave balances last week, and our leave balance has risen. We've looking back across the last 3 years, we can see there's sort of a cycle, which is a little bit different to other councils. So we have a team of about 20 that are full time through the summer period, managing the peaks of activity through the summer, and then we have a cohort that take leave kind of in the February, March, the ones that have worked through Christmas. So we're expecting our leave balance to drop in the next quarter in line with the previous year's patterns, but it is up on previous years. At this stage, it's something we need to be on top of, but it's not alarming. The GMs all have KPIs to get on top of and manage their leave balances, and we get reports sent through quarterly showing who are the highest ones, and managers have a word with them, and we have leave plans in place for some of the largest, shall I say, offenders. But I'm also conscious that some of the folk that have really high leave, it's taken 5 years to get into that position, so it's going to take 5 years, to work back to a decent level of leave on their balance.
So, Aileen, so you're happy that it's able to be managed and there's no extra support or anything required from council around all that?
Yep. So perhaps I'll answer that a little bit more widely. I guess the challenge is that we are not particularly resourced for the peak at Christmas. So we're resourced for Wednesdays on a weekday, we're not resourced for the peak that comes in on a weekend, and we're certainly not resourced for that summer peak. So I guess if council were going to help in any way, it would be having a look at what sort of redundancy we actually have amongst our staff to carry those peaks. But that becomes a financial matter quite quickly. So as of this moment, no, there's nothing council can do to support that. Am I worried about it? I'm not. I'm keeping an eye on it, put it that way, as opposed to being significantly worried about the leave balance side of it. But I do worry about the stretch on the resourcing through those peak periods.
Cool, thank you.
So I've got Rika and then Dali.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask the 9 nasty hazards, number 5 that we have there, with regards to asset failure and some of the audits that have been done at the solid waste refuge trends, and then we're going to have some additional audits. It says here that the action is to schedule some additional audits to follow up on findings. Yeah, could you just talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're basically closing out that the recommendations have actually been undertaken, and the control environment has been improved. Yeah, so that's what the secondary audits are. Yeah.
I've got Dali, thank you. Okay, Martin, you've got a question?
Yes, just around that personal confrontation one. On the top, talking about CCTV, screen protection, panic, etc. So how old is the bit that says quotes from successful suppliers with the property team for implementation?
Yes, good question. What I can say is that the approval has just gone through to get those done. So yeah, it has taken a little bit of time to get approval through to have those installed, but the purchase orders have been created and they will go.
Thank you. I do get regularly asked by our front-facing staff.
Thank you, Martin. Peter, your hand is still up. I take it you've asked a question. We've got another one.
Sorry, I pulled it down.
Great. Look, thank you for that. Just 2 very quick questions, hopefully from me, Paku. One is, for some time now, and it's common sense for me, the nasty 9 out of the nasty 9, we don't have any evidence of there being a 10th by any chance. I'm not suggesting I've found one, by the way, but I'm just wondering whether in terms of our scanning of our risk environment, there is any possibility that we might have others.
Through the chair, yes, we are going to be reviewing these 99, and there well might be.
Yeah.
So yes.
Just as a matter of perhaps, I'm thinking perhaps your courtesy or follow up. I noticed we had this last month. Have I got that correct, or is that the previous February? We had a slip in Whangamata. We got an accident. Oh no, it's February 23. Forget that. No, I was thinking of 24. That's brilliant. Thank you for that. Is there any other questions for folk? Being none, can we please go to the recommendation, which is that we receive Paku's good report. Thank you, Len. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Dali. Motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against is carried. Thank you. We go to the non-financial performance measures, half-year results. Josie and Leslie. Brilliant, welcome. I'm not certain who's going to lead off, Josie or Leslie. I'll leave it in your hands, but if you want to give us the snapshot of what attracted your attention, that'd be great. Thank you.
Non-financial performance measures. We're presenting this as a half-yearly report, so it covers the 1st of July to the 31st of December 2023. Normally it's a quarterly report, but there were delays in the 2022-23 annual report audit, so that's why we're presenting it as a 6-month. So I'm assuming that it's all taken it as being read, and I think it's a pretty good report. Most of our measures are on track to be achieved. So I will leave it to you to ask any questions.
Thank you for that, Josie. In fact, do we have questions at all, Josie or Leslie here? Yes, Martin.
Just under the community facilities library, I think it was last year, and Robin might be able to confirm that for the libraries, the measure was going to be either switching or including the door counters rather than just the percentage of library cards being used. Is that going to kick in from the next financial? Okay, but it's definitely in there to be. Okay, and are we replacing that measure, or is it going to be an additional one as well as the library card? So double question, sorry.
Maybe I could answer that question through the chair. We will be replacing. I think we presented you with the draft performance measures a couple of times now in LTP workshops, and that one has been replaced.
Thank you, Martin. Do you have other questions for Josie? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Josie. You have performance reports on particular areas, for example, water supply, wastewater, stormwater. And my question is around water supply, and you've got different criteria, protozoa, water quality standards, etc. If we go to page 56 on this, page 14 of the report, and you've got performance measure on Whangamata. My question is, how many water treatment plants are there in Whangamata, and does this relate to all of them, or is it broken down, or will it be broken down in the next report by specific plants?
Question for Brett.
That's really the question.
But we have Brett here.
Yep.
Oh, great.
Well,
Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Through the chair, we break the measures down by plant. In Whangamata, we have the Wentworth, the Beverly Hills, and also the Moana Point plants. So they are all measured separately, not as a combined unit.
Thanks, Brett. In the report, they're not separated out. Is that something that we should be doing? Or on page 56, it's got Whangamata, and it's just it seems to be a report which covers all three, but should they be separated out and reported?
Through the chair, when we report to Te Mata ROI and DIA, we report by individual plants.
But that's not this report. Is there some benefit for councillors to see that reflected individually?
I would suggest so, because each of the plants operates separately. While they combine to join and make the whole network together, they are operated separately.
Okay, thank you. And my other question was around, if I may, Mr. Chair, Thames South water supply, because this is a risk report, do we need to be identifying the Taumata Arawai letter from, I think, November of last year in terms of the risk to council, or is that something that's identified more in LTP risk?
Can I just check what your question is we should note here?
Sorry, so the question is, the letter from Taumata Arawai has instructed council to install protozoa barriers and to upgrade that plant. Should that be identified as a risk in this report, or is it more an LTP risk?
Through the chair, this is a performance report rather than a risk report. So it's telling you how your plants are performing. It doesn't actually talk about things like the risks to that performance. Where that would be covered, I don't know, but it would be covered in the LTP either.
I find it, Leslie, I probably would just be reading a pushback. I actually think Len's right. I mean, this is an important report to us about our performance, and does it give rise to concern? And I will loosely use the word risk if I could, because that's exactly my question. What does Te Mara ROI think about this? So it's interesting here that we have a letter that says you've got to fix it. So I actually think this is management commentary. It's a different question when it comes to what we may or may not say in the annual report, and I say that quite happily in front of Carl. But I think information value for the committee here is actually we've got to do something about this, and it's in the LTP. Well, presumably it's in. So I think just in terms of adding to it, that's useful, because I mean, interesting, because I was thinking about your comment about whangamata. When I'm interested, John, Brett, I didn't quite catch it. You said 3 plants, but did they feed the one system? In which case, I presume if one plant's non-compliant, that means what's being supplied, or are they separate zones? Might be the wrong word. And actually, is it a proportion of the whangamata population that's not getting compliant water, or is it the totality? There's a level of just a wee bit of understanding that would be helpful for us, because after all, we do get the report on performance, which is tremendous. This is great detail, but actually it's hard to know what to do other than just to accept it, or else raise these sorts of questions, which I think are a good one. So if I just ask you to reflect on that. Deli. Oh, sorry, Deli. John actually had his hand up first, so I'll go to John first and then you, Deli.
Thanks. Look, this is probably just trying to help my understanding of things, but if I look at page 55 of the report and look at, for example, the Whitianga performance, it shows as non-compliant for the NZDWS requirement. And that's for that period from July 22 to December 22. When I look back at the last report that we received at the last meeting, it indicates that it was fully achieved for that period. And I'm just wondering how fully achieved and non-compliant, or am I just misinterpreting something here?
Ask Brett to answer that question.
Through the chair, the drinking water standards is no longer applicable, and that was what you were talking about, the DWS. We're now under Te Mara ROI, but quite often what happens is you might have 1 or 2 days of the operation of the plant where we were not compliant, and that then says for that period you have non-compliance. It is very, very minor levels of non-compliance that makes the whole period non-compliant. Does that answer your question, John?
It's really helpful. Thank you for that. I just wonder then, for the understanding of this report, as to whether we could have some sort of measure. This is, without an answer today, but that indicates whether this is one of these just minor 1 or 2 day issues, or it's a consistent non-compliance issue, just to try and understand the degree of concern around some of these things.
Through the chair, yes, I think that can be done. Some of this report is around the fact that we have now put new plants in at Moana Point, Onimana, etc. So up to those plants were running, we did not have the full barriers in place, the protozoa and bacterial barriers, and we now have. We have some of the same issues to a certain extent at Hahei and Matarangi, and until we upgrade the plants, they will continue, and Thames Valley is a perfect example of that. We have a boil water notice in place there, and until we get the new Piri water treatment plant, we can't reach compliance level.
Thank you for that, Brett. So I think I've got Deli and then Terry.
Brett, I understand that we might be digging into some stuff that's really operational at a level that perhaps we don't need to know, but you know, like the narrative on page 57 is telling us some dialogue around why something has been achieved or not achieved. And I would assume, you know, my trust in what you guys are doing is that you would highlight if there was a risk that would come through in the performance measures. So whilst I'm not disagreeing with Len and Bruce, I think there are processes and triggers already in place that there doesn't have to be a detailed narrative on every single plant in the area, and that you could be trusted to identify where there is a risk posed and put that into the narrative and have it highlighted in a
Through the chair, yes, I would agree, Deli. As I said, the rules that we are now applying are very strict, and there is only certain compliance that if we, to give you an example, if we do not have water less than a certain turbidity for 5 minutes, then we are non-compliant that day. That is the level that happens, and that can be an operational issue that we have something wrong with the equipment, or we have some dirty water coming through before we shut the plant down. They are not long-term operational issues that are causing these non-compliance.
Thanks for that. Terry.
Yes, so my point's back with Leslie around the levels of service to provide playgrounds with the fit for purpose and safe. Page 676. It talks about the 4 playgrounds in Whangamata, and our board has asked me to raise this around the fire brigade playground, which was up for replacement in 2020. And they did a ping test on it and says, yes, that was in the last LTP, and it's now been dropped from this LTP. And yet it says here it's still safe to use. So are you comfortable with that discussion?
Probably want to pass that question on to either Derek or Glenn. I don't know if Derek's online, but Glenn.
It does feel like a reasonably specific question. I wonder if that's one that can be taken offline, Leslie, and feedback given coming through from the community. So I'm sure we can find an answer. Well, I'd hope we could find an answer for it, Terry. It's a good question.
Certainly get back to you, Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Are there any other questions folk would have about the performance? Could I just raise one, please, on resource consents on page 23? Oh, yeah, sorry, page 65, sorry. Yeah. 23. I've taken us right back in the agenda, aren't I, Terry? Look, so improving performance, which is tremendous. I'm just looking at the process within statutory time frame, 92%. Now, look, this is no different to, in some sense, compliance under the water standards, and probably that's a reasonably good percent. Having said that, there are those that look at this pretty tightly in terms of 100%. Is that something that we have either learnt something from and can do better? I use those words advisedly, that move us towards 100%.
Brian Taylor, the regulatory manager, isn't with us today, but I do know that there are continuous improvement processes in place within that team and monitoring of what's going on with resource consent application.
And if I could comment, one of the periods here had a permanent Section 37 extension, which means a doubling of the time frame because of the what happened through the COVID period. And the data, some time ago, I think it's about six months ago, we removed the doubling of the time frames. So hidden in here is probably a massive improvement to the previous year, but it's obscured by the fact that we removed the Section 37 extension that allowed us to have double the time frame. That's a bit more complicated than 91 and 92%. Okay. There's
something important there again. I mean, I also take my advice from my colleague Deli in terms of information, but actually it does become a slight question of what's the right level of information to tell as far as that's concerned. Key point is it's improving, and I take that one on board, and that's tremendous to know. Any other questions folk would like to raise in terms of the performance through it? I don't see any more hands. All right. Look, that's really helpful, Leslie and Josie, and I appreciate my committee taking a fair bit of time to look at that. I think we've got one question for Terry, Leslie, that you'll work with somebody to give some advice back to the committee board, please. That would be great. So look, our recommendation on page 41 is that we receive the... Do we have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Rika. Thank you, Martin. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you very much. Righty. So we have project, we've got item 3.5, project delivery update. So I think somebody I haven't met before is going to talk to us on this one. Lorenzo? Lorenzo? There you guys. So I've got Lorenzo and Glenn. Sorry about that. I'm Bruce Robertson, the independent chair. So I haven't met either of you guys before. I don't think. If I have, my apologies. But great to meet you. So I'll be very keen to hear what you'd like to contribute about this paper.
Thank you. I'm just the acting program manager at the moment. So I've been in the role for about 2 or 3 months. And Ian Morton wrote the report about 3 months ago.
Yes.
The initial report. So there's a follow-up.
Yeah.
So the purpose of this report is really a follow-up from the previous meeting a quarter ago, where there was an action to do monthly health check reports with the project team in terms of how we're performing against the project delivery, the CapEx project delivery. Those meetings have been happening, and this is a snapshot to report back to this team how that is going. Due to the nature of the agenda and everything else, that's about a month old. So if you've got any specific questions, we'll give you the latest information. Our recent meeting with that team was yesterday, our monthly meeting, which is not reflected here. The second part of this, the purpose of the meeting, the report, is to report on updated improvements to the project management delivery and what we plan to do going forward. So that's the reason why Ian's here in the capacity to provide some advice on that. Not quite sure how you would like to proceed, whether or not you taken the report as read and then you want to ask some questions, or whether or not you would like us to go through it.
Lorenzo, look, not necessarily line by line, but if there's anything in particular about the projects before we have Ian on the improvement program, I'd welcome you to make comment. Otherwise, I will leave that to councillors to any particular matter you want to raise about the red flag projects.
Yes, in terms of it's always hard to have the most up-to-date information. So as an update, there's an inconsistency between the various attachments. So we have reported that we've got 9 red flag projects that we're managing. In the detail Appendix B, that hasn't been updated to reflect that. There's a few more in there.
Yeah. So
the version of the truth a month ago, when this report went in, is attachment A. Since then, based on yesterday's session, we're down to about 5 red flags. It's just a pattern of sort of understanding where the big red flags are, getting a plan to address those, and going forward in the right direction, getting a decrease in sort of the big risks, and dealing with that through mitigation.
So I think probably my colleagues like to know which are the 5 big ones.
Yeah. All right. So we refer to the red flag projects, attachment A. I'll just go through the main ones. So we've got the drinking water standards with a budget of just over $6 million. we reported that there's a issue with the, there is a plan to address this this risk with the land acquisitions. Recently, we have had some go forward with the deal with the landowner in terms of forming agreement. There's a meeting of the minds. It's a matter of proceeding with the agreement and getting to settlement. So that's an example where the red flag item has gone to amber. There's still risk associated with that. There's two major treatment plants, Matarangi, which is and Hahe, which are affected by one is affected by that land deal. Due to the time it's taken for the land deal, there is risk associated with expending the annual plan budget. So we're also looking at mitigation risks and how are we going to deal with that. Is that the sort of level that you'd like me to go into?
Yes, it is. I'm conscious that if you're wanting to deal about particular transactions, we should take it out of the public hearing. So I'm happy at the high level. Thank you. Kelly, sorry, Rika.
Ask a question just related to Matarangi, particularly with the treatment plant upgrade. Are we at all concerned with the new beaches subdivision sections coming online and our capacity to cope with the existing plant's capacity to cope? The wastewater treatment plant, the upgrade, we're waiting on a consent, I understand.
Depends how much detail you want me to go into.
Yeah, I think
in this
that might
forum,
be one that we should perhaps consider how we report that, Rika, either outside the meeting, or that sounds like a piece item, I think, at this stage, given what you're asking a question about an individual. I think we should keep us at the higher level.
It's really macro because otherwise we're not going to have time to get through this.
That's right, exactly.
So we're really reporting through. I mean, the main things are going through these. We're actively looking at identifying the red flag areas where there's issues with scope or finance or major risks. Since the last report, we've added on land acquisitions and consents to the matrix because they're a large contributor to risk. So they've got their own categories now. And land acquisition is one of those things that features quite a lot on slower delivery or issues that need to be worked through. So what it's done is it's actually improved the culture of risk and looking forward and what you're going to do about it, rather than issue management and just looking at the train go by and reporting on that. So there is, from my point of view, as an external project management consultant looking in at how the behaviour is happening, I'm seeing that there is an improved recognition of true risk management.
Brilliant. That's music to my ears. Yeah.
Thanks, Lorenzo. Page 85, solid waste, the last item, refuse transfer station roading. Which one? Which transfer station?
So it's actually multiple different transfer stations. So it's basically how to increase or improve the roading into those areas. Actually, as of yesterday, that's come off as a red flag because the team have reassessed any kind of health and safety risk associated with that. They've put some temporary measures in place. What they plan to do is actually come back and actually just do that under standard renewals next financial year. So again, this is part of the actions that we've really driven them to, that they said, hi, we actually need more money for this and we need it now. We went, that's fine. Please actually describe clearly the health and safety risk that we're actually then going to come back for more money around. And as a result of that action, they went actually probably manageable with some interim measures that they can afford out of this year's budget, and they'll do it next year.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for that. Yes, Martin.
Yeah, so I'm still not clear with attachment A which five are still active. Could you just go down in the order that they are in the table and clarify, please?
At the high level, please. I'm kind of conscious that we don't want to identify.
Yeah, just identifying the ones rather than the reasons would be great.
Right. So just across it. There's four of them that have gone from red to amber in this report. It needs to be corrected. That's Takuma intersection. Okay, I'll let you answer.
So Takuma is still red. That's still outstanding. Matarangi, water renewals, Thames South Water, and the drinking water standards. They're still red. The other ones have gone to, so for example, Buffalo Cemetery, that was red previously under scope and risk because we didn't really have a clear scope around what was actually required there and what had to be delivered. Now it's extremely clear about what the obligations are on council, and an external contractor has been engaged to look at the design on that. So that's gone from red to amber because we now have a plan in place and we're now have to do. So that's an example of one that imply it's actually red to amber.
And just a follow-up question. So when you say they've gone from red to amber, is that across the 6 different measures, or is that there may still be a red, but overall the risk has gone to amber?
No, that's against all the measures. So we've obviously have a look at scope, schedule, finance, land acquisition, renting, risk, quality, to say, do we have clear plans in place against all of those areas? And therefore, is it still a concern, or do we still need to red flag? Right. So they've gone entirely to amber or green. So for example, the solid waste ones that we just talked about, and there was another solid waste one, that's went entirely to green because we've said we've reassessed the risk. It's lower. We've got a plan because actually we're delivering that under next financial year, so we're comfortable with it.
So there couldn't be a project that had 5 greens and 1 red that would still be on the red list.
Yeah, there could. I mean,
right.
You know, so there could be. For example, if scope's red, the chances of, you know, schedule and everything else being good is probably unlikely because we don't know yet. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So it's highly context specific, isn't it, Ian? And indeed, Lorenzo, as you tried to indicate, this risk is fluid on the basis of when you had to prepare this report, plus even the fact that you had, you're monitoring actively as you did yesterday, which has given rise to reclassification, which is always the challenge of any committee that we get information relevant to the time we meet. So that's good.
And I will say, just the direction of travel is really heartening. You know, when we started back in September, this first report, we had around 15 to 20 red items. We came down to 13. We then have moved that down to 9, and we're progressing that down to 5 as of today. So I think for me, the key is the progression, and therefore the learning and the updating capability within council to actually move towards that. And I will say, Lorenzo's been great at actually helping support the team to move in that direction and support them through that.
Brilliant. So I'm wondering if it's just because I think it's you that would talk to it, just on the bottom of page 82, there is some of those structural improvements that you've built into the project management process, whether it's you or Lorenzo to speak to it. Just give us a quick snapshot of why that's helping us. I mean, I think this must be part of the answer as to why we're going from a higher number down to a lower number with a level of confidence.
I'll ask Lorenzo to talk to what's happened today, and then I'll talk about the improvements going forward.
Okay, so a good way of thinking about it is that I have been put in as acting program manager. So I'm doing on the ground at grassroots some actual improvements, especially in terms of focusing on this year's annual plan delivery. So by actually appointing me into that role, I've actually replaced nobody because the previous program manager retired some time ago, so there wasn't a program manager. So obviously there's going to be an improvement in that space. In terms of what I found and what the biggest improvements could be short term, I found that there wasn't, I couldn't find any significant project plans for a lot of the projects, which is obviously good practice for a project to have a project plan. So I have worked pretty swiftly with that team to get in place from the highest value, more complex projects to the lowest to get project plans in place. What that's actually...
John, could I suggest you go into the room out so I can hear you guys speaking? As much as I suffer from hearing, it's distracting. Sorry, Lorenzo.
That is encouraged and fostered the project managers in that team to have some structured thinking going forward about how to deal with risks coming up, or how they're going to making sure they fully understand the project baselines they're delivering to, as opposed to the default, which is a reactive way of managing, which is not necessarily ideal. So I've seen step improvements in that, and that's the reason why that on the macro level, the project risk profile is reducing in the right direction. However, there are still challenges. So amber is not green.
That's right.
You know, there's still challenges that we're working through. Some of the other things I've put in place, I've identified some of the highest risk, highest value activities, and the level of staff and management in those. And some of them I've started wrapping around some more governance, project steering groups, to make sure that we haven't got isolated staff working on things that have high risk and importance about delivery, both in terms of value and reputation. So there's more leadership wraparound of that, and that is also forcing us more structured thinking and to actually face head-on the risks and come up with creative ideas that we can work through the process to actually resolve those. So the two main examples of that are the 3 water CapEx projects, which include the water standards, which is quite a large value, which contains a lot of projects. So that has now got a project steering group meeting. In fact, that one's got one every fortnight from now, from when I started it about 2 months ago. Got one in the meeting about that this afternoon. I put COPU in there, but COPU is a project that I run out externally that has got governance and project steering group meetings and everything else. The other thing we've done is we've tried to bring that team together a bit more because of COVID and travel restrictions, as we well know. They're working across the region. So one of the focuses on, since I started, is actually bringing that team together and working together as a centre of excellence for project management, and getting to believe that that's their sole mission in life. So there's a lot more of that. So we have a lot more team interaction, and also we have one hub now in Teams to actually bring all that documentation together in a consistent way. So those are some of the things that I'm actually doing on the ground. I'm working with Ian also on some more medium-term improvements. Very follow on from that.
That's great. That's very helpful. Ian, is there anything you want to add to that, Ian?
Just as far as looking forward, so Lorenzo's on the ground working with the team and supporting the team to deliver this financial year and really focusing on that, which has been amazing. What I'm really focusing on is how do we set ourselves up now to be ready for 1 July for the start of the long-term plan, because certainly when we started this journey, there were some projects that didn't have clear scopes, didn't have schedules in place, didn't have clear financial baselines in place that everyone agreed to. We were unclear if the resourcing was available to actually deliver against what we committed to. Now, obviously, you've went through a process on the long-term plan and you've agreed what can and can't be delivered to, but it's really around working through the detail now on those baselines and being really clear that we can deliver that, starting to actually break down any of the risk areas. So that's where I'll be kind of focusing in on scope, schedule, financial risk for the next financial year. But it really should be wider than that. We should be having a look at a 3-year program of work and going, how do we actually provide some agility in that 3-year program of work around, if one project for whatever reason gets delayed because of land acquisition or consenting delays, how do we backfill that with some other projects that are in year 2 or year 3, and how do we bring that forward? So really having a look at not only delivery for next year, but actually starting to actually consider agility and how we can actually move things around. Where's the delegated authority? What needs to come back to council? How can we provide that to actually provide some flexibility for delivery? And again, this all links back to the CEO KPI around 85% deliverability for against the financials. So, so that's what I'm going to be working with the team. We'll look at processes. So do we have clear processes in place? Because one thing that we're finding is, as problems occur, how are those lessons learned and how are they fed back into standard processes? Because without some standard processes, either the good things that have happened don't get exemplified in the current processes, or when things go wrong, how do we learn from that for future projects? Looking at the tools, so not only the project management tools, but how do the project management tools link in with your finance tools? So this is really good cross-check of information. I sometimes find, you know, the project delivery team are saying we're all on track, but in the financial forecasting, we're actually showing behind. Well, that tells a story for me. So how do we link the two together to make sure we're consistent? And then thirdly, just looking at people, how do we support and mentor people? But also, what capability do we need within council? I mean, a lot of your larger projects, you subcontract out to professional organisations to deliver. So is the right subcontract management capability within council to manage that? Because you don't need to deliver it, but you need to manage them. And then how do we build up that capability over time to say, for the larger projects going forward, is there going to be build up of capability within council to deliver them in the future? So again, it's having a look at all of those areas.
That's actually music to my ears. So thank you for that. That's been very helpful to understand where it's going. That actually is quite transformational, I would suggest. And I would like to probably test with my councillors. I'm assuming that's music to your ears.
Absolutely.
This must be
This is
at the
fantastic.
core of the I mean, I could have a dollar for every committee I sit around and say it's about delivery, it's about delivery. It's what you guys are on about.
Yeah.
And I hear your point about forecasting out, because Carl is going to come and ramp up and say, is our CapEx program doable? So this is giving us the best shot. So thank you for that. That's really helpful, and it certainly is an external. That's music to my ears. Now I've got a few questions. I think I've got Martin first, or Terry first. Terry, then Martin.
Mine's going to be brief, but it's fantastic to hear this. The word real risk and what it means, put it into light for me, and it's one that we've never really understood properly. So, yeah, well done.
Thank you for that, Terry. Martin.
Just that last point you made about how, oh yes, a project was all showing as green, and then, you know, well, actually the finance thing was a problem. So, yeah, there was a project like that for a piece of community art, and yeah, it was all going along fine, and then all of a sudden legal said, well, hang on, no one's got a lease or anything. So presumably legal would be sort of within the consents framework?
So as part of the planning and scoping of any project, we would always identify key stakeholders. If there is a legal component to the project, that would be identified upfront, and they would be part of the project team, and they would feed into the project team at the beginning, not at the end. So for that example, I would expect a really clear scope and really clear stakeholders, internal and external, and internal stakeholders. Legal would be clearly identified with the roles. So
okay, so
it's really clear.
So that would be under scope rather than.
Yeah. So
okay.
if things change, then you too, and therefore if things change, then that's a scope. Yeah. And I will say, just as far as the long-term plan is concerned and the doability, is we have assessed the risks that have happened in the past and fed that in through to the doability on the long plan, and particularly around land acquisition and consenting, where we said where were the issues in the past, and it was generally around those two areas for significant delays, and also community engagement. So, for example, if the community weren't on board, that drove significant delays to your project. That was all fed into the doability programme for you long term.
Brilliant. Glenn, then Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to say to you that it's easy for us, especially me as a new guy and some of the councillors that have not been on council before, to take for granted what we're hearing from you as this is how things should be. What I'm hearing, though, is the reality is that until the processes that you've put in place were there, we did not have those structures there. And we're now seeing the huge gaps that you're filling. And I think I just want to say it gives me, and I'm sure it gives the councillors, a lot of confidence to hear what you're describing to us. And I'll reiterate what Bruce said, transformational. This is really good stuff, and I'm so pleased to hear it. and it feels like we've got a clear pathway forward, not just for the projects that you're working on now, but the projects that didn't necessarily go according to plan before. So I just want to say thank you, well done. Gives me a lot of confidence, and I think also we need to congratulate Aileen for having the vision to put the structures in place, tap you guys on the shoulders and say, guys, we've got a problem, can you help us out? And it feels like it's working well, so good job, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Peter.
I was just about to say what Lena said. I think I just want to commend Aileen for identifying quickly the shape of resource we needed in this organisation to address some of the significant problems. That's both in leadership in the operations and in what we're doing in the project space. And I think it's fantastic that we have been able to identify competent, well experienced resources to fill in those gaps. So that was my comment.
Thank you, Peter. I think we've had a pretty good crack, and I'd be keen that we. Oh, sorry, John.
I must be in your blind spot over here, Bruce.
No, obviously I am. Sorry about that, John.
That's okay. I'll sit here patiently. Look, first things, I do apologise for the conversation over there, Bruce. I swear it wasn't about lunch. It was about an item on the table before us, but the conversation went on too long, so I apologise for that. Won't happen again. Hey, I'm happy to hear that we're getting systems in place which will stop us in a place where we have ended up a couple of times. We've sat here at this council table and believed that we were on track with various projects, and so, Bruce, Ian, you're confident that this will pick up those issues that we faced before with various projects early in the piece, and we won't be faced with that that breakdown just as we think we're going through the finish.
Yes, look, I'm pretty confident. Two things. That scoping up front is really important. It sets a baseline, sets everyone on the same track. It protects the project managers, but it also protects the organisation. So I think really focusing in on that planning up front, understanding about what's being delivered, will definitely. Other areas we're looking at still step through a project, whether it be in design, and I think with incorporating that process and that upfront planning, we'll reduce that risk entirely. So I'm really confident in that. I'm not saying that risk won't happen. It definitely will on a project, but you won't get the surprise that you got. And I think that's the key thing is how do we manage that? Things will still happen and we will still come to you with some bad news at times. And that's just the reality, but you will not get surprised.
Can I just follow up on that? We've actually got to work on the initiatives and the improvements that have the most impact. With the long-term, the LTP coming up and the new annual plan coming up on the 1st of July, the most important thing is that each one of those projects is allocated correctly and resourced correctly, but has a project plan that has been given structured thinking about how to deliver that project over and above the current level. That's going to have a roadmap which is going to be maybe at best maybe 50 to 60% correct. I don't work in a perfect world. If it's 80%, you're doing really, really well. And that's the reason why it's also really important to manage those projects as we're delivering them. And there will be issues and risks that need to be managed, and that's the purpose of this forum. So, and the high level, the reporting of that at the high level, at that sort of macro level, wood from the tree stuff, as this report is important. But also it's important to start doing that at the grassroots level of each individual project and getting that reporting done against the baselines and against the plan, and then having enough courage and enough experience to make some judgment calls along the way, changing direction before it comes to a big problem. Yeah.
And sorry, can I also add, we talk about risk a lot. This will drive a huge amount of opportunities, I think, within council as well. So, for example, if you think about the larger projects and the capability that you can bring in-house, that actually builds up that ongoing resilience of your staff and capacity going forward. So there's large opportunities there, but also looking at delivery options for big projects. Do you do just a design and then a build? Or do you do a design build contract? So I think there's other opportunities that we don't really talk about as much, but there definitely is opportunities by really getting the right rigor in.
Yeah, I'd for the enthusiasm a little bit, so.
Oh, there's no final comment, I think.
Sadly, we're out of time.
We are really lucky to have Lorenzo and Ian here, but we're not going to keep them forever. And at some stage, we're going to have to take the training wheels off and fly solo, and try not to have too many bumps when that happens. And I just also wanted to say that you can see the benefits here of the professionalism and the delivery, the specialist delivery skills of the project. One of the challenges that I've seen coming in here is who owns a project and when does it transfer from one person to another. And we have a particular problem between the area structures to the centralised project management structure. And so there's quite a strong push-pull around who is it owned locally or is it owned centrally, and when does it change hands and how is it reported, who's it reported to. I'm just saying that's from my perspective, it's not resolved.
Right.
I'm not sure how to capture both the benefits of the local engagement and the benefits of the professional central delivery.
Right.
So I'm just putting that on the table that for me that's unresolved, but I'll talk to the clever people and see if they have some views on that.
And I'll maybe just reflect on that, because I think that has been quite a challenge, since joining the council around who has the responsibility to decide on stuff. So normally you would look at this from a project delivery and say, we build a RACI matrix. So who's responsible, who's accountable, who contributes, and who do we inform as we go through the project life cycle. And I think that the discussion that you've just mentioned there, Aileen, around where does the budget, so there's a budget owner within council, but where does their delivery, where does their responsibility lie, especially if they get a centralised project? From my perspective, they're always responsible. It's their project. It's, and how do we drive them to write really good, clear requirements up front? How do we do a respectful handover from that team to the project delivery team? And then at the end of the project, a respectful handover from the project delivery team back to the business owners to say, does this deliver what you've asked for? And again, this should be defined within a clear process, but that RACI matrix is really important. We have a draft already, but being clear about that, because it's not just a project delivery organisation, it's the organisation that needs to understand this around their responsibility.
And I think that might all be so key to even perhaps the question your community board asked you to raise, Terry. So I think that's actually a really, thank you for acknowledging that, Aileen. And I think it will be interesting, from a committee perspective, actually see where that lands. Because I think it's quite critical to actually the area, not versus, but and central process, which I think is really important. Hey, that's been very helpful. I'm conscious that we've probably had the time that we can focus on that. And thank you, Lorenzo. Thank you, Ian, for that. That is, as I said, most encouraging to hear that, which is tremendous. I wonder if we could. Thank you, Terry. Do I have a second, please? Thank you, Martin. I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that, and thank you for being here this morning. Conscious that it's probably taken a bit of time. And what a good time to have Hayden come up and talk about debt, because Ian talked about the connection between project delivery and finance. And I think I've always argued in front of you guys, undershooting our debt isn't necessarily the right answer. So, because that says we're not doing what we said we'd deliver. So look, that's not necessarily the case here, but Hayden, it is good to have you here. Thank you. And I know you're holding the fort in the absence of Donna, so thank you. In your hands, please.
Through the chair, I'll take the report as read. Probably the key things to highlight is we haven't had any change since we last reported in terms of our debt levels. They're the same as they were in November. So we've basically got $79 million of external debt, but of that, $6 million is pre-funding maturing debt that's coming up in April. So we've got about, it's $73 million of debt that's sort of is our net position. In terms of our interest rate position, we've got some really, really good interest rate swaps at the moment. We did a whole exercise a couple of years ago where we did a blend and extend where we got out of a whole lot of sort of higher ones, and we took advantage of the historically low rates at that time, and that's been great. Like our average, the weighted average of our interest rate swaps is 3.6%, which is, like, as you know, at the moment interest rates are pretty high, and so a number of our swaps we actually get money back. Well, just about all of them we get money back from the bank, rather than being on the other side where we've paid them out. So that's just on our swap proportion, and we've got about 60% of our debt is under interest rate swaps. So yeah, basically it. And I guess we meet with PwC every month, and they're really, really good. And obviously they've got a team of people that look at what the markets are doing and all of that. And they had indicated that interest rates were going to start coming down, but yesterday the Reserve Bank, I think, held the interest, the OCR, and you know, you read different things, and apparently inflation is still a bit sticky, so we'll just have to see what happens.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks, Hayden. Questions for Hayden over the. So look, just a reflection on a couple of matters. This is where, as a committee, our responsibility is around the prudential limits, and there are some key numbers sitting here. Just looking at what is it? I can't see the page. It's the third page of the PwC report, which 96. Has got the interest rate risk position. I take your point about our fixed position, and it's great to hear that the swaps were in the money, so to speak. Yeah. Not that we're here for speculation, I stress very much for the minute, but actually the relevance of that, and we've got the bands there. It does suggest that we're getting a bit skinny towards about 2029, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We're at the minimum, so we'll have to do
some form of action to fix that. Yeah. Okay. So let me just check. Your weighted average cost of debt overall is what?
Overall, it's sitting at just under 5, I think it is, 4 point something, okay. But 3.6.
Yes, I get that. Yes. And how much? Sorry, I didn't quite pick you up. How much matures this year?
11 million.
11 million.
Yeah. So we've got 6 of it sitting on term deposit. Yeah. So when it rolls over, we'll obviously use that and pay that down, and then have to borrow another.
Right. So you've got some pre-funding there sitting.
Yeah.
That'll knock it off.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty useful position. That's it. Sorry. The point about asking what is our complete weighted average is at 4.7.
Yes.
Is fairly consistent with the rest of the sector.
Yes.
Given where we are with our GFA.
Yeah.
But with the risk, particularly with maturity, that it goes up rather than down at the moment. Yes. But I hear your point. Okay, so we've got the maturity, and that's the other question, of course, is we've got the maturity in line. So can we just go back to the first page, please, of their report? Sorry, not the header, but the first page of the diagram. So how are we tracking against our overall debt position?
Further to against annual plan, we've got an annual plan figure of 89.6 million to end. We're at 73 million. It'll really come down to capital delivery, as we just heard.
Yes, this is back to the previous discussion.
Borrow that money, yeah.
Brilliant. So somewhere, look, I think going forward, because given we've had a very good meeting with Lorenzo and Ian, I'd like to join where we are at their higher level in terms of capital delivery with where we are with our debt program. Because as I said, I'm not fixated on spending every last dollar we have, but we have a debt plan for a reason, which is related to levels of service. And if we are under, arguably it says, at least as an indicator, we might not be where we want to be on our levels of service. So that's another story, but we'll deal with that later. That's really helpful. While I've had whittled away here, is there any other comments folk would like to raise? Martin?
It may just be my advanced age and failing eyesight, but on that debt forecast one, could we please make those two, debt forecast LTP and the debt forecast LTP old? Can we make those colours quite different? Because I don't know which one's which. You know, I don't know, pink and green or something. Thank you.
We're accountants. We're not here to help you.
Come on, who else is having trouble with that? Is it just me? Oh, okay. Bruce.
Yeah, I'm sure
Okay.
we can change that.
Hey, did you have a comment you want to make on that? Or?
Yeah, we can change that, I'm sure.
Yeah. There probably is some massive bureaucratic exercise in PwC to change colours here, Martin.
As long as it doesn't cost any extra in IT software updates or anything.
Yeah, it's a PwC tool, but I can't see it being too hard to do.
No, I agree. Yeah. No, thank you for that, Martin. Appreciate the suggestion. Any other comments?
Just a quick comment really around the fact that it's been good to see the 3.6 interest rate that you've captured, and that's been some good forethought back in the time. So that leads us to some comfort going forward for the next few years anyway. So well done on that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, can we move to the resolution, please, then, which is that we receive the report. I think it's just important that we just acknowledge that in the middle of that we have looked at our prudential limits, basically, and that we are in a comfortable position as it stands at the moment. Martin, are you moving that? Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Dali, I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Hayden, debtors report, please.
Through the chair, this is another information report on our debtor positions. I'll take the report as read, but basically we're on track to basically end sort of where we've ended sort of in the previous financial year. Since this report, we've had another rate strike on the 15th of February, and collections were pretty good. So yeah, we just have to monitor it. Obviously, things are a little bit, are a lot harder at the moment, but we seem to be seeing still good collections. So we're obviously following still the same process whereby we're offering people, arrangements to pay and working with to, things are sort of tracking on.
Yeah.
Yes, just really a question around the 1.3 million of debtors relating to Maryfield land. How long is that going to sit on the books? Is there any discussion about where that should go?
In terms of the postponed rates, that'll always sit there until they're repaid via property when their property is sold from individual, then we take the rates back. So the postponed rates will still sit there until that process goes through. In terms of the MFL land and the 1877 land, every year we have to make an assessment on that under the new change to the Act, and we have to make an assessment whether that debt is collectible. And the Act basically says if we deem it to be uncollectible, we should be writing it off. We'll do everything to try and collect it, but
must be a point.
There is, and every year we have to kind of do a bit of an analysis of that debt and go, are we really going to collect this debt or not? And
is that time coming soon or what?
It will be done before the 30th of June, yeah, the assessment, yeah.
It's common around the country. As you say, it's basically a statutory function that has to occur, or decision-making process that has to occur. Any other questions on this at this stage? Being none, then let's move to the resolution. Look, thank you for it. I always feel like when we go quickly through a paper, I still am very grateful that staff have actually gone to the trouble of preparing it, because it's important to have a chance to look and monitor. So thank you for that, Hayden. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Terry. Seconder, please. Thank you, John. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you. Righty, what does it get me to here, Deborah? gets me to lunch. Can I suggest, is it helpful if we move into, we deal with the motion for public excluded so that when we come back at 12:45 we're, so if I could just move to the resolution that we have on page 101. We have a number of matters which I'm proposing we move into public excluded. So from the chair, I will move that we go into it. Martin, thank you. You'll second that. Is there any discussion on the motion? I always, out of principle, like to wait because actually this is an important part that we believe should be in public excluded. I'm obviously sponsoring that it should be. Okay, there is no discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you.